Hey everyone, ready to dive into a story that sounds like it came straight out of Hollywood. We're talking a former MMA fighter, a missing ATV, a forged title, even a touch of reality TV drama thrown in for good measure. And the best part, our main character, Bryan Caraway, landed himself on Washington State's most wanted list. Not once, but
It's
twice.
amazing, isn't it? How something that seems like a straightforward insurance claim can spiral into such a tangled web of, well, deceit. You'd think, who'd risk so much for an ATV? But that's exactly what we're going to unpack today, peeling back the layers of this wild story.
Exactly. We're not just regurgitating headlines here, we're going deep, trying to figure out the why behind it all. So picture this. December 2018, Caraway, originally from Richland, Washington, reports his ATV stolen. A 2015 Polaris RZR gone from his property. Sounds pretty open and shut, right?
At first glance, maybe, but look closer and whoa, those red flags start waving. Just 6 days before reporting the theft, Caraway buys an insurance policy for that ATV from GEICO. And then, get this, 6 days after reporting it stolen, boom, he files a claim.
That timing is suspicious, to say the least. I can see why investigators would be raising eyebrows right about now. It's almost a little too convenient.
It is, that kind of rapid sequence, often a classic sign of insurance fraud. Makes you think, was the policy bought specifically to make that fraudulent claim?
So what was Caraway's alibi? What did he tell GEICO went down?
He claimed he'd bought the ATV and all the extras, helmets, charger, spare tire, you name it, for a cool $18,500. And to back it up, he gives them a title, supposedly showing his ex, Miesha Tate, gifted it to him back in January 2018.
Miesha Tate. Now that's a name I recognize. Former UFC champ, reality TV star. So did GEICO just take his word for it and hand over the cash?
Not so fast. Insurance companies have their own investigative teams for a reason. And in this case, they did some digging into Caraway's story, what they found. Well, that's where things take a seriously wild turn.
Okay, I'm hooked. What did those investigators uncover?
First, they find evidence that the title Caraway provided, the one supposedly showing Miesha Tate's generous gift, yeah, it was forged. And second, they figure out the ATV wasn't actually stolen. Well, Miesha Tate had it the whole time.
He tried to claim insurance on an ATV his ex-girlfriend had, even forged the title to make it seem legit. That takes some serious guts. But it gets even crazier, right? Because you mentioned the most wanted list twice.
You're right. There's more to this story that makes it even more baffling. Tate told investigators she repossessed the ATV. Now, that term might not be familiar to everyone, but basically it means she took it back because Caraway hadn't held up his end of the bargain, probably something financial. And get this repossession happened before Caraway got that insurance policy.
Wait a sec, so he insured an ATV that his ex had already taken back. This keeps getting wilder by the minute.
It does, and if you think that's wild, hold on tight. This is where the Las Vegas police enter the scene. Surveillance footage from Tate's home shows Caraway taking the ATV, not once, but twice, after he'd already reported it stolen and filed that claim.
He took the ATV back after reporting it stolen. Why on earth would he do that? That's playing with fire, especially knowing the insurance company is already sniffing around.
It is, and that's what makes this case so compelling. It's almost like he's challenging them to catch him. We've got forgery, a false insurance claim, and what looks a lot like theft, all tangled up in this crazy story. It begs the question, what was Caraway thinking?
Yeah, it does seem like he's almost taunting them. Like, here's this former MMA fighter, used to taking risk in the octagon, and now he's rolling the dice with the law. A recipe for disaster, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. And those actions, they've landed him in some seriously hot water. We're talking multiple felony charges here. Forgery, attempted theft, filing a false insurance claim, and making false statements. But before we get into the whole legal mess, you mentioned something earlier that I want to unpack the why behind it all. What would drive someone to go to these lengths? The payoff doesn't even seem that big.
It's the question that keeps swirling in my head. It just seems so irrational.
Right. And while we can't exactly climb inside Caraway's mind, we can consider some psychological factors that might be at play. Sometimes people, they find themselves caught in a web of their own making, lies upon lies, and they keep digging that hole deeper, hoping they can somehow scramble out.
Like a downward spiral, each decision making things worse.
Precisely. And you got to factor in a possible sense of invincibility, especially with someone like Caraway, a fighter, someone who's used to pushing limits and coming out on top. They might underestimate how serious it is or believe they're too smart to get caught.
So we've got a mix of desperation, maybe a dash of arrogance, and a completely skewed sense of the risks involved.
That's a pretty solid analysis. But it's important to remember we're not just talking about this one isolated case. Insurance fraud is a massive problem. It costs billions every year.
It's easy to get swept up in the drama of this particular story, but you're right, there's a bigger picture here. You said earlier that insurance fraud affects everyone. How so?
Think of it like dominoes. One thing knocks into the next. When someone files a bogus claim, the insurance company pays out, right? But ultimately, those costs, they trickle down to all the policyholders. Higher premiums for everyone. They estimate it adds hundreds of dollars to what the average family pays for insurance each year.
Wow, that's a big hit, especially these days. And it's not just about the money either, is it? There's this loss of trust in the system.
Absolutely. When people start to question the fairness of the insurance industry, it breeds skepticism, and then legitimate claims might go unreported. People hesitate, they think they won't be believed, or that they'll be seen as trying to take advantage. A vicious cycle where the very system meant to protect people turns into something they fear.
That's really sad. It defeats the purpose of insurance altogether. Instead of feeling secure, people are stressed and uncertain.
Right. And we can't forget the impact on the insurance industry itself. Think about it. They have to pour tons of resources into fighting fraud. Those costs, they get passed on too, leading to even higher premiums for everyone.
A lose-lose all around. Fraudulent claims hurt the honest policyholders, trust erodes, and it just gets more expensive for everyone to be protected.
Exactly. There are ways to fight back, of course. Technology is getting better, data analysis is more sophisticated, but it's an uphill battle. The more we understand about why people commit fraud and how they do it, the better chance we have at stopping it.
So what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What should people keep in mind when it comes to insurance and fraud?
The biggest thing. Remember, insurance fraud is real, and it has consequences. It impacts all of us, not just the companies. Guard your personal information carefully and be suspicious of anything that sounds too good to be true.
Being a savvy consumer, being aware of the risks, that's crucial.
You bet. And if you ever think something's fishy, report it. Speaking up might stop someone else from becoming a victim.
We all have a part to play in keeping this from happening.
And lastly, remember why insurance exists in the first place. It's about peace of mind, knowing you're covered if things go wrong. By working together to prevent fraud, we make sure the system stays fair and works the way it's supposed to.
Well said. What a journey this case has been. A whirlwind of insurance fraud, MMA, and reality TV, all rolled into one.
It really has. And for me, the most fascinating part is the psychological angle. What pushes someone to risk it all for such a small reward? It keeps me up at night thinking about it.
A question without an easy answer, for sure. But by digging into cases like this, we get a glimpse into why people make choices that, on the surface, seem completely bonkers.
Absolutely. It reminds us that even in the craziest, most unbelievable scenarios, there are lessons to be found.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to chew on. Imagine you could ask Bryan Caraway one question. What would it be? What would help you understand his choices? Give it some thought, maybe even share your ideas with us on social media. We'd love to hear your take on it all.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those eyes peeled.
It's hard to predict what Caraway will do next. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to zoom out a little. Look at what this case reveals about insurance fraud as a whole.
Absolutely. It's easy to focus on the drama, the individual story, but this case highlights a problem that affects every single one of us.
We talked about the financial side, how fake claims lead to higher premiums for everyone. But what about the less obvious stuff? The human cost of this kind of fraud.
Great point. One thing is the breakdown of trust. When people feel like the system is rigged, that it's working against them. Just think, you hear stories of people taking advantage and you start to wonder, will my own claims be taken seriously?
You'd wonder, is everyone trying to pull a fast one? Will I be seen as a fraudster just for making a legitimate claim?
Right. And that doubt, it can lead to people not reporting legitimate claims. They're afraid they won't be believed, that they'll be seen as opportunistic. And that creates a terrible cycle. The system that's supposed to protect you becomes something you're scared to use.
What a shame. The whole point of insurance gets lost. Instead of feeling secure, people are anxious, distrustful.
And don't forget the impact on the insurance industry itself. They're forced to spend huge amounts of time and money fighting fraud. Those costs, they get passed along to us, higher premiums for everyone.
So no one wins. Fake claims hurt the honest people, trust goes down the drain, and it becomes even more expensive to get the coverage you need.
Exactly. And while there are things in place to fight this, like fancy technology and data analysis, it's a constant struggle. The more we understand about why people commit fraud, how they do it, the better our chances of stopping it.
So if our listeners could take away just a few key things from all this, what would they be? What's most important to remember about insurance and fraud?
Number one, insurance fraud is a real threat with real consequences. It's not a victimless crime. It affects us all. Be careful with your personal information and watch out for those deals that seem too good to be true.
Be a smart consumer. Understand what you're getting into.
Right. And if you ever get that gut feeling that something's off, report it. Don't hesitate. You speaking up could save someone else from becoming a victim.
We can all make a difference.
And one last thing. Insurance is supposed to be a safety net. It's there to give you peace of mind, financial security when you need it most. By working together to prevent fraud, we can ensure it stays fair and works for everyone.
Well said. This case has been a wild ride. Insurance fraud, mixed martial arts, reality TV drama. Who knew it'd all be so intertwined?
It has been quite a story. And for me, the most intriguing part is the psychology behind it. What makes a person throw away everything, risk it all, for a seemingly small gain? It's a puzzle that keeps me thinking.
A question without an easy answer, that's for sure. But by exploring cases like this, we start to understand why people make choices that, at first glance, seem completely crazy.
I agree. It reminds us that even in the strangest, most unbelievable situations, there are lessons to be learned.
So as we close out this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought. Imagine you had the chance to ask Bryan Caraway one question. What would it be? What could help you understand his actions? Think about it, and if you want, share your thoughts with us on social media. We always love hearing from you.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.